5, 4, 3, 2.
What makes you say that?
Hello, friends. Welcome to What Makes You Say That. This is episode 7. My name is Brian Williams, and I am happy to be joined once again by my esteemed colleague and fighter jet enthusiast, Mr. John Kerr. How's it going for you today, John?
I'm all right, Brian. Thanks for asking. I hope you're doing the same.
Absolutely. Hey, around here we like to warm up before the big game. So are you ready for this week's warm-up question?
I'm ready.
We met for the first time on my first day at BH almost 12 years ago. What is your earliest memory of our illustrious time together at BH?
Well, I think when I first met you, I was like, hey, look, another man. So that you had, well, you know, there are very few of us at the school. So we always kind of keep track of how many of us are there in case one of us goes missing suddenly. So that would be the first thing. And I think I probably met you a few times that day because everybody who met you kept introducing me to, you have to meet Brian, you have to meet Brian. And I was like, I met him 4 times already. But so that would be probably my first memory of our meeting.
Yeah, we met many, many times. I think the last time we both kind of played it up like we hadn't met before, and we were very excited.
Where? What? Who?
Yeah, and I think it all started there, and it's history since then. We have a great episode planned for you today. We'll be chatting with BH Student Activities Coordinator Mandy Green about the 2020 prefect elections and how different this year's election was. We'll also catch up with some of the newly elected prefects, and we'll preview the Doll Assembly, which will be taking place virtually on Friday, May the 29th. There's that and so much more, but the episode doesn't ever really start until we hear that quote.
All right, well, this week's quote, I think I'm going to come back to it when we get to the question of the week, but I'm going to go heavy today. I'm going to go with some Tolstoy as we're into I don't know how many weeks. And Tolstoy at the beginning of Anna Karenina says, all happy families are alike. Each unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. And so we'll talk more about that as we wrap things up. But that's this week's quote.
Another great quote and a fantastic way to start episode number 7. Well, John, we're 68 days into it now, and I think you have some breaking news. Is it true that you left your house?
I did. I ran a brief errand, and I learned quite a bit. It's amazing what happens when you get past the edge of your driveway and the end of your street. I went out and I followed the advice of, I'm getting my news from, the Prime Minister and leadership, and he said that he recommends Canadians wear. So I went out and I had my mask, and it was just a quick 10-minute errand, and I got there and I recognized that I was the only person wearing a mask. And then it made it more sense why Chrissy was maybe laughing at me when I left. He goes, you're going to wear that?
But you successfully completed the errand and you made it back. And so it must have felt pretty good.
Yeah, but I will say I'm not a huge fan of the mask. That's for sure.
I'm with you there.
Hopefully we move past that sooner than later.
And it looks like, and I know people can't see you, but I can, but it looks like you've changed locations in the house.
Well, when this all started, I foolishly thought that we would all gather around the dining room table, the 4 of us all working with headphones and, good internet. And I was the wanderer. I was the planet.
Metaphor.
And I ended up in the basement, or as I like to call it, the gentleman's cavern. But I moved up to the sunroom where there's far more bird song, far more cherry blossoms and flower blooms. So it's definitely lifted my spirits. And I think it ties back to the quote about happy families and unhappy families finding the place to work. But how about you? What have you been up to?
Well, you know what? I did something on Friday, the 22nd of May. It was 65 days since I had last done this. And I actually went into the school. And in 12 years, that is by far, by leaps and bounds, the longest time between visits to the school. I just had to pick something up. And I got to tell you, we talk about the feeling when you walk in and what it's like. And it really felt peaceful. It was weird, the darkness and the emptiness, but it still felt like home. It still has that feel. And I cannot wait for everybody when it's safe to return. So it was a really good moment, but also tough at the same time. But 65 days is a long time.
Yeah, it puts it in perspective, doesn't it?
So that's the kind of week it's been. It's time now to take a look at the prefect elections. We're happy to be joined now by BH Student Activities Coordinator, Mandy Green. How are you doing today, Mandy?
I am doing good. How are you doing?
It's another day, and we're doing great here. What makes you say that? Well, we're going to talk a little bit more about this, but we've had our prefect elections, and boy, were they different this year. But let's make the announcement here on the show. John and Mandy, can you guys introduce the 2020-2021 prefects?
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, the moment you've been waiting for. All right, let's do this quick. Head girl.
Juliana West.
School captain.
Peyton Klassen.
Sports captain.
Tessa Zander.
Arts prefect.
Yuri Toyota.
Community service green.
Yuri Asaka.
Yearbook prefect.
Carrington Dong.
Public relations grad prefect.
Julia Ryan.
Boarding prefect.
Anna Ueda.
All right, house heads. Here we go. Braemar house head.
Addie Germudis.
Glenn Guerin house head.
Gabby Tedeskin.
Craig Gowan.
Gina Pleck.
And I noticed that we're missing my house, Ballater.
Boo Ballater. Head girl, Nira Atwal.
School and green captain.
Lily Paulette.
Clubs prefect.
Emma Hilliker.
Yearbook prefect.
Leah Gowrie.
And two house heads, one for Braemar.
Lisa Yin.
And here's Ballater.
Brooke Bailey.
All right. Well, congratulations to everyone. What a different scenario we had today. And like I said, we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But first, Mandy, we'd like to know, how have you been surviving quarantine, and how much has your job changed since we moved to remote learning?
Surviving? Ooh, I'm not sure that I have survived. I am alive. But I would say my job has changed drastically in that I talk a lot more than I normally ever would.
Okay.
I would just say, talking a lot more because I seem to have meetings after meetings after meetings each day.
Yeah, lots of screen time for everybody involved, for sure.
Yeah. And lots of trying to get my dog not to bark and go crazy in circles while I'm on my calls. So I have a bag of treats beside me every time I'm on a call.
Well, that's smart. I mean, you've adapted.
Uh-huh. There's an article by Doug Spears in the Free Press. I don't know if anybody read it, but it's exactly that, about him being on a call and his dogs. That's the time they start to bark. And then trying to get my children to not come into my video because they want to see who I'm talking to and if they can say hi almost every time I'm on a call.
It's great. My Mila comes down and says, "Dad, I'm on a call." When I'm yelling at William.
Oh, so everybody can hear you yelling on her call.
Well, that's fun. So this year's prefect elections, they're a little bit different. I mean, the elections are always a highlight. I think, the speeches in the theater, the look of the atrium every year with the posters. So everything was different. How did you pull off this year's election, and what was different about it?
Well, it was all so different. The girls the candidates had to be really good at reading their email because everything had to come through there. And so normally they're not really given deadline updates, but this year, because I don't see them in the hall to tell them, oh, don't forget this is due, there was a lot of emails with reminders and telling them, don't forget to get this in on time. We had quite a few team meetings to learn, how do I speak to a camera and how do I record my speech without moving, without, how do I look at the camera, not over the camera, so it doesn't look like I'm looking at the wall, but I'm looking at my audience. We had to practice that. And then getting them to record it and put it in the proper place was always fun too, because they had to have it in the right file. And then I wouldn't have been able to do any of those videos without Chris's help in communications to put them all together in a movie format for me, because my computer doesn't have the storage to do that.
Producer Chris always comes through.
Yeah, he might have got a little Starbucks for doing all that, but yeah, and then doing their posters. So now instead of it being like a hand art project, they could use the internet and they could create them. So they did look a lot different this year, but yeah, there was lots of like positives to it. Being the first year, I would say it was the most stressful thing I've ever had to do in my career. But now that I know how to do it, I don't mind it. But obviously being in the building, it's so much easier to just meet in the theater, less error, chance of error, that sort of thing. But I mean, I think they went really, really well. I love that all the teachers went with my plan and showed it in advisory because I was worried about the numbers of watching and then voting without watching. So I think that all worked well. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah. Do you think compared to other years, the ballots cast were kind of what you would expect?
This year's actually were higher. So
okay.
I don't know.
Okay, that's
I don't know if it was because it was virtual, if we watched them in homerooms and advisory, I don't know. But yeah, the votes were higher.
Or maybe people were just looking for something different to do that day. I mean, I'm not just slagging democracy, but
that could very well be. Hey, it's an email about something else. What is the next step now for the newly elected prefects? I imagine they're going to have a pretty busy next few weeks.
Yeah, it's going to be different because it's still so uncertain about like what September will look like and if we'll be able to have an opening assembly and gather together. So the first thing already, the senior school incoming prefects have to order their white blazers. So they're in the process of that for 2 days. So they're looking at ordering them and Top Marks is on it, but they just opened their doors on Monday. So we're not quite sure when Top Marks will be able to have them by, but we're crossing our fingers, September. And then they're off to plan for the virtual summer fun day. So that'll happen the June 15th is going to be the virtual summer fun day. So that'll be their first planning event. And then sometime in June, whether we do it virtually or distanced in the building, the girls that are here, we're going to just start the retreat. So they'll start to pick their theme for next year and get that kind of ball rolling. But because we don't know what's going to happen, we're just going to plan like we always do. And then if it has to turn into an email assembly like we did in April, we'll do that.
Yeah, well, that sounds like there's still lots to do and hard to do when we're not really sure what the plan is. So last thing for today, what we like to ask everybody around this time is, what is it about BH that you're missing the most right now?
Gotta say, just human interaction. Seeing my friends, having our morning chat on the balconies, seeing the girls, having visitors in my office. I would say that too. And even just maybe not so much the drive to school, but driving home to kind of like decompress the day, being home all day, you don't really get any alone time.
Well, there it is. It has come to a point where people are now liking being stuck in traffic. And that's kind of where our lives are.
Yeah. How crazy is that?
Well, we want to thank you for taking the time today. Thanks for the insight on the elections. I think you did an amazing job pulling this together. I think it worked, as far as I understand, very well. And I know you have some very highly qualified students who are going to, under your direction, give us the best possible year next year. So thanks again for stopping by.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
It's that time again for BH staff trivia. Well, Zach and Boots did really well last week. I'm hoping to follow suit this week with John asking the questions. Are you prepared with some clues, John?
I have a few clues for you. I got a great variety of them, and I could play it one of two ways. I could just give you the really tough ones and go for the points, but I think in the interest of fair play and sportsmanship, I'll try to present them as fairly as possible.
Sounds good.
Okay, so clue number one goes like this. Both my parents are immigrants from very different parts of the world. And by different parts of the world, we mean two different hemispheres.
Yikes.
So that's clue one, and I didn't expect you to get it with clue one.
Moving on.
Okay, well, this is a literary reference. Their favorite work, or one of their favorite works, is by Douglas Copeland, and it's called Microserfs.
I seem to remember you saying that you had easy clues for me.
Well, you have to think, if you're familiar with Copeland and what he writes about, that's a fair clue in my books.
Okay.
And the final clue is that this person has been playing their favorite sport for more than 15 years.
Okay. I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to go for a bonus point, and I'm going to name the sport as well.
All right. I think you got it.
If I'm right, the sport is ultimate, and the BH staff member is senior school teacher Elizabeth LePage.
Points for Mr. Williams. Well done, sir.
Finally.
Good call.
Finally. Well, John.
But I'll bet you it was the third clue.
You know what? I knew it from clue 1, but I just wanted to know about Elizabeth.
Her dad is born in Poland. Mom's from Peru.
Oh, that is fantastic. Well, hey, those are great clues. And big shout out to LP, as most of the staff and the students know her. That's it for BH Staff Trivia.
Thanks, Liz.
We're excited to welcome to the show 2 incoming prefects who were successful in this year's prefect election. Please welcome head girl Juliana West and sports captain Tessa Zander. How are you girls doing today?
I'm good. I'm super excited to be here and talk about what's happening in the upcoming year.
I'm doing pretty well too. Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Okay, well, this is really exciting. So, I mean, the first question I think that I always ask the prefects, whether it's when I see them or on a show like this, it's what does it mean to be a prefect at BH during your grade 12 year?
Oh, it's an honor. Obviously I've been here since JK, and I've watched the prefects every year, and I've always known it's something I want to do, to be able to go up there and say a life speech or whatever, and talk to the school and just tell everyone like what's going on and be able to plan things and raise people's spirits and wear that white blazer. It's something I've always wanted to do, and it's just such an honor to be able to do it, especially after what's happened this year with the whole pandemic. I really want to make sure next year is an amazing year for everyone.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a really important point. We're all going to be looking for an amazing year together.
Now, Tess, we want the truth. How does it feel to finally have the power?
Well, I think Juliana said it well. Like, it's an honor to be able to have a position, and this was only my first year, so not like Juliana, who's watched the other prefects. But I think this year we had a really good group, and they really encouraged me to want to be a prefect. And I think just having a position that can have other younger students look up to and try and make their year good too.
Well, that's a great outlook. I think that's really important. So congratulations again, girls. Juliana, what would you say to the outgoing prefects from like this year's prefects, if they are listening right now? Do you have anything kind of to say to them?
Yeah, so first, thank you so much for making this such an amazing year. I enjoyed everything from the assemblies to the activities. I know they worked really hard to make sure that it was a fun and enjoyable year for everyone. And I know it kind of got cut short near the end, but they've done an amazing job of still sending out virtual like prefect what's going on with them. And I watched them and I really enjoyed them. And so they've done an amazing job, especially with the circumstances. So thank you for giving the entire school an amazing year. And I hope we can live up to what you've done this year.
For sure. And Tess?
You guys definitely like made my first year a lot better, made me love the school as much as I do. And you put together some really great activities this year that just like kept me wanting to come back and participate more. So thank you.
It's undoubtable that it's been a different election this year. You guys had a much different campaign. How hard was it to give that speech and get your message across, giving it to a camera instead of a packed theater?
Oh, it was quite difficult. For me, I had my dad record my speech, and my mom was standing right next to him the entire time watching me film this speech. And so the whole time I was like, I heard the breathing in the background, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to do it again. I was just, and I've done the speech like probably 10 times, and I'm like, I'm about to give up and just do this in clips. Yeah, it's really difficult because when you're doing it live, right, you can kind of communicate better and read the audience versus just talking to a camera and saying, Well, hi.
We've talked a lot about that.
Yes.
Yeah, I think, well, the speeches were great, whether it was uncomfortable or not. Tessa, what about for you?
I actually didn't have anyone there standing beside the camera. I did it alone in my room. So it was really just strange, like standing there talking to myself. And I refilmed it many times because I was like, this is not working. And then I really understand what the teachers mean when they're like talking to a blank screen, because you just can't read the room at all.
Yeah, and I think both of you seem to be very comfortable in front of people, so I think you would have fed off the crowd for sure. Just switching gears a little bit to next year. So just, I know you talked about this, both of you talked about this in your speeches, but could you give us at least one thing you're really excited about for 2020, 2021?
So I'm really excited about being able to like not necessarily like make up, but like do some more mufti, because I know I was talking to Miss Green saying, could we do another Spirit Week potentially, because I know we missed one. I'm just excited to be able to maybe do two of things and give everyone a really fun year.
Yeah, perhaps double up on the staff or students dodgeball event.
Yes, for sure.
How do you feel about giving that first speech to a real live audience?
Oh, I'm extremely excited. I really hope we do get to have an assembly and I'd be able to welcome everyone. I know potentially it might have to be virtual because of social distancing, but I really am hoping that we can do that.
Absolutely. Our fingers are definitely crossed. I think our toes are crossed too. Tess, what about for you?
I mean, I'm just really excited to get back and see like what kind of like spirit we can bring up. I mean, it's been kind of hard for some people in this time being away from people or being stuck at home, but just sort of starting activities again or just getting the school active again would be really good, although we don't actually know what's going to be happening.
Yeah, for sure. I think that we learn things day by day, and with summer coming up, hopefully we take some time and enjoy summer and be ready for a full return to school as soon as possible. Last thing, before we let you guys go back to class, we've been asking all of our guests the same question, and I think a lot of it, we have similar answers, but what do you miss most about BH right now?
I miss the environment. I just miss being able to see my teachers every day and see my friends. And it's honestly, because you don't think about it when you're there, but when you don't have it, then it's just this whole other world that you miss every day. And I've noticed recently that I find like just group FaceTiming isn't enough. Like I really miss being in that environment, being with people and the different things that happen every day. I mean, it's crazy sometimes. So, I just miss the environment.
For sure. And Tessa?
I mean, for me, it's probably a predictable answer, but I miss the hockey team and I very much miss the hockey coaches and just like our atmosphere there every day. And from there, I miss all the little girls walking by every day to their dance classes in their ballet slippers. It just like made my day every day.
I watched a bit of the Rangers practice with William, and I was showing him that even the NHL goalies are doing the same drills that 10-year-olds do. So I think we're getting closer, Tessa. I think we're getting closer.
I hope so.
Well, congratulations again, girls. We're super excited for you and for the school that you have chosen, and you've been elected to be school leaders for next year. I hope you have a great rest of the year and a fantastic summer, and we're excited to see what September 2020 brings.
Thanks for chatting with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Well, we've been at this remote learning thing now for about 9 weeks now, John, and certainly we've been trying to highlight the successes on this show about how the learning is still continuing and how positive experiences are being built in the classrooms all across the school. And I think that's true, but there's also challenges, and we've been kind of talking about this with our students and with each other, that there certainly are drawbacks and struggles. What do you think one of those is?
The first one for me is when you get to read the room, right? There's always that moment. I was in the habit of starting my classes off with a quote, and we know we do the check-in now, and we did the check-in then just to see how are we doing today? What class are you coming from? What's coming up after? Because all of those things impact how a student's going to perform or be in your room. And there were times when you could read the room and just see that it wasn't the best day to make this happen. It wasn't happening today. And my teaching philosophy, I'm more interested in self-actualization in the student. I care about my subject area, but I care about my student more. And so sometimes you could just put it on hold or take a few minutes and work through it. But in this case, it's really difficult to do that. I find myself kind of going in with an agenda. This is what I'm delivering today. And we don't have that same level of connectivity. So that would be one of the challenges. I don't know if you find that similarly.
Yeah, we've mentioned reading the room a lot, and I think people maybe don't understand how reactive teachers have to be. And this is what you're talking about when you're referencing shifting mid-lesson, depending on the mood of the room and depending on, hey, teachers have the best plans and the best interest of their students at heart, but sometimes the lesson doesn't go the direction you're thinking. And like you said, with remote learning and with some cameras on, some cameras off, not being able to take those cues, both from their posture to their faces and things like that, it's markedly different to shift and to know that you have to shift.
Right. And I mean, that's something as teachers we develop. That's part of what we bring to the room with experience, right? In 20 years of doing that, your spider sense is pretty keen, and it doesn't take long. But in this case, when you're staring at maybe an avatar or a student's initials, I want to give a shout out to those students who are brave enough and comfortable enough to keep their cameras on, because just to see them smile or roll their eyes, either one, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I mean, we joke about and we laugh about the fact that we can't hear them laughing at our jokes. I mean,
well, they never did. They never did.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That implies that they used to laugh at our jokes, but they did and they do. But now it's we've mentioned this before. It's crickets. So what else is there?
I think giving feedback. It's one thing to provide feedback when you can see how the student is reacting to what's being delivered, as far as they're relinquishing their work. There's an emotional stake in that process. And I taught to my classes, I start every comment now with their name, just to remind myself that when I write that comment, I'm talking to a person, even if it's via the written form, as opposed to saying, hey, I really like to, you can see in their face where to kind of push and where to let up. But when you write the comment, there's no two-way. Very seldom does a student write back to you and say, hey, when you said that, right? But in a conversation, that's part of the dialogue.
So feedback, as we know, and we've mentioned this before, how important feedback is to the learning process, and to have that hampered by the distance and the structure of our classes certainly changes things for both students and teachers and makes everyone's lives a little bit more difficult. So another massive event that was different this year was the doll assembly. So yesterday we aired a virtual doll assembly, and it was different for us because we couldn't see the graduates.
Right. And I'm sure that the grade 12s who were in on their call and had the opportunity to kind of view together recognized in that moment how important it was to see each other's faces, right? I mean, whether it was a smile or a tear,
there would be both. There would be both.
I think so. It stresses how we are emotionally connected to one another, and that we read our emotions, and that builds part of our common experience. So definitely a different way of doing it.
So there was a streamed ceremony, and for those of you who maybe haven't heard, the grade 12s were all on a Zoom call together doing a watch party of the doll assembly. So they were able to experience it together, which is amazing. And then the rest of the school was able to watch the doll assembly part. And I know we're going to dedicate a full episode to the doll assembly next week. And so you'll want to stay tuned for that. But reading the room does apply here in this situation to the Zoom call with the grade 12s, like Mr. Kerr referenced. And although we are making it through, there are certain struggles doing remote learning, but we're going to get there. The end is near, as illustrated by the virtual doll assembly from 2020.
Continuing with our prefect interviews, we're really happy to welcome our yearbook prefect, Carrington Dawn, and public relations grad prefect, Julia Ryan. Congratulations, girls. How are you guys doing today?
I'm doing pretty good, Mr. Williams. It's fun to be here. I'm doing great as well, and I'm really excited to be doing this today.
Well, I think it was an exciting election to say the least, but certainly different. How was it different than what you expected?
Since I was young, I always expected that one day when I would run for prefect, I would stand in front of the entirety of senior school to present my speech and, make one of those giant posters that was in the hallway. Of course, I didn't get to do either of those things this year, so it was definitely very different than what I expected.
Yeah, and for me, I'd already ran in middle school, so I kind of had an idea of what to expect, but then for all of that to just be turned around and suddenly I'm not able to, instead of making that big poster and, giving a big speech in front of with everyone watching, like Julia said, we didn't get to do that. So it was a lot of juggling, and it was definitely different because everything was online, which is probably good for me because I'm not the most artistically talented. So it was good. It was different, but it wasn't as crazy as I expected it to be.
Yeah, I think, Julia, you bring up a great point about those posters because it just changes the atmosphere of the place. And we've been talking about things that we miss and favorite traditions and that kind of stuff. And I'm going to admit to you that when those posters go up and we kick off the campaigns, it's pretty exciting, and it really changes the feel of the building. But it's too bad that, as you say, you probably thought about it for a long time, but now you get to be a prefect.
Yeah, I think the posters were still very well done, but there is, like everyone is saying, something to be said about walking through the atrium with all of those really impressive and well thought out posters. I guess the next thing I'd like to ask would be, what does it mean for you to be a prefect and to wear the white blazer going into your last year at BH?
I have been going to BH since I was McKinley's age in JK. And like every single event or assembly that you would go to, you'd see the big girls in their white blazers. And like, since I was young, I was like, I want to be one of those. I want to wear the white blazer and the kilt rope and like stand in front of the whole school and like talk to everybody. And I'm so excited that I get to do that next year.
I can totally agree with that. I haven't been going to BH for quite as long. I started in grade 5, but I still remember it was my first assembly, and the first thing I remember seeing was the girls walking in wearing the white blazers, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. And I was like, I want to do that one day. I want to be a prefect. And of course, as I got into middle school and senior school, then I got to learn more about what it meant to be a prefect besides the snazzy white blazer. And it means so much to me to be an ambassador for the school. And it's like the progression from when I was so young and new and I had no idea what I was doing to now being the girl wearing the white blazer. It feels so amazing. It's like a dream come true. And I feel very honored to be a prefect this year.
Nicely said, Carrington. I have to admit to you that when I first started at BH, I got my tour after my job interview, and I was, why are some of the blazers white? And they're, well, those are prefects. What's a prefect? But I think we all kind of remember seeing for the first time those white blazers, right? But nicely said.
Yeah, and I think it's much more than the white blazer for everyone, but that's certainly one thing that's noticeable as you walk around. And I think you both began to answer this question with your response to that previous one is, why have you always wanted to be a prefect? What was it about seeing the students walk around and seeing the school leaders? What does it mean, or why did you want to become a prefect in the first place?
I guess when I was younger, I always looked up to the older girls in the school who wore the blazers and the kilts and like the white blazers, just everybody older than me. And I hope to next year be one of those girls that all of the little kids in their tunics see and are like, she looks so cool. I can't wait to be like her when I'm older.
Yeah, and as for me, a lot of what Julia said, she really covered it here, but I guess what it means for me to be a prefect is when I first arrived to BH, I was I was kind of insecure and I wasn't very confident in myself, and but BH has really turned me into such a confident and well-spoken person. And I want to give back to the school that has helped me through so much. And I just feel like it's something that I can do. And I've always been the type who wants to make a difference. And I've always wanted to inspire younger kids and inspire the next generation, because as we're growing up now, that's what we're called to do, is inspire the people who will come after us. So I just want to give back to the school that's given so much to me, and to set a good example for the people who are going to follow in our footsteps.
Hey, very, very well said by both of you. Thank you so much for joining us. And again, congratulations. We look forward to what September 2020 will bring.
Thanks again.
Thank you so much.
Roast the host.
It's that time again for our top-rated segment, Roast the Host, where we test each other on things we believe the other person should know. John currently leads 3-1, but I have a point pending as we wait for the NHL's return, which to me really looks like it's getting closer. So I'm actually inclined to call it 3-2 right now.
Don't count your chickens.
But I suppose we can wait for confirmation from the NHL. But lots of good news, it seems, coming from there. John, if it's okay with you, I think I'll ask you the first question this week.
All right, go.
I think this is an easy one.
Oh, no.
Who wrote
Oh, my gosh.
the Canadian poetry classic David?
I'm going to go with Colin.
The answer is Earl Barney.
Okay, yeah. I've never even heard of Earl Barney. Probably shouldn't admit that, but yeah.
All right. Well, a tough one.
I guess I know what poem I'm reading when we're done here. All right. Well, I'll lob this one up for you. All right. As a historian, we understand, or we accept, that one of the precipitous events that began World War I was the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand by the nationalist Gavrilo Princip. I was going to ask you who assassinated the Archduke, but I thought you might get that. So instead, I'll say, who was the Canadian Prime Minister at the onset of World War I? Maybe we shouldn't do this anymore.
We talk about, the react. Oh my goodness, John, you're doing this to me again.
68 days, my friend. A long time, I'm sure.
I want to say, was that Laurier?
No, it was Borden.
Oh, Borden.
Sir Robert Borden.
Sir Robert.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, don't spend enough time on World War I, but next year we will be.
There you go.
All right, good question. Roast the host. I closed the gap to 3-2, but only because I'm counting the NHL. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. Score remains 3-1, as neither one of us know what we believe the other person should know.
And we both feel shame right now.
Switching gears now, we like to welcome the middle school prefects. We've got head girl Nira Atwal and school and green captain Lily Paulette with us. Good afternoon. Congratulations, girls. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm great.
I'm doing good. Yeah, thank you.
So it was an interesting campaign, much different than I imagine you expected. I guess my first question I'd like to ask is, what made you want to become a prefect in the first place?
Well, when I first came to the school, I always looked up to the prefects, and I was always wanting to be able to bring my ideas to the table. And when the opportunity came, I just had to take it. So that's why I decided to run for head girl.
And I wanted to become school captain because I've always just wanted to be a leader in our school and bring new ideas.
Well, those are great answers. Those are great reasons too. Was the campaign much different than you expected, perhaps at the beginning of the year?
For sure, yeah. I thought I was going to have to do the whole poster, speak in front of a live audience thing, and then we switched to virtual elections, which was very unexpected, but I think that we handled it very well and we were able to do it.
Yeah, I was not expecting having to do it on a laptop. I would have rather said my speech in front of a live audience, but I liked the way that we did it this year.
Yeah, you guys certainly did an amazing job getting your message across.
It's interesting that, so you would rather have given the speech in front of people? What, you think that's easier than talking to the computer?
Well, I was really nervous that people weren't going to watch my speech. So I was hoping that it might have been easier to do it in front of a live audience.
Well, that's a good point, because if you have an audience, you know they're watching.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a very good point. Can you maybe each of you give us one thing you're really excited to bring to the school next September when we re-enter, however that looks like?
Yeah, like I said on my platform, one of my big ideas was more competitions between homerooms. So at the beginning of the year, I'm really excited to start doing that so there can be more friendly competition and bring more fun to the table.
I this year have some ideas for house battles, and I think that would be really fun, stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's I think all of those ideas sound great. I wonder if you can answer this differently than almost everybody else. This last question, we've been away from the school for a long time. Let's finish today with, what do you miss most about BH?
I miss the social interaction. Being stuck in my house isn't the most fun thing. And I miss being able to go to school, see my friends, see my teachers, and just being able to learn in a normal learning environment and not learning off of my laptop all the time.
I am just missing being in classes, able to communicate with everyone. And the fact that I have to talk in front of a screen isn't as fun as school normally is, and it doesn't normally feel the same. I just wish that we could go back soon.
Well, I don't want to speak for all your teachers, but I think that they're probably feeling the same way. Congratulations again, girls. We're very proud of you, and we're very excited to see what you bring to the table come September 2020, when hopefully we all return in one way or another. Have a great rest of the school year. Have a fantastic summer, and all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Last week on social media, we posted the BH community check-in, and we asked you to tell us how you were staying active, and we got some good responses. One of the people who responded suggested that they're doing handstands for 10 seconds, which is quite impressive. And the other...
Try it.
Yeah, we can give it a shot. And then the other is home workouts and walking, and I think that's a pretty common way right now. I know that McKinley and I take our walks every single day, and home workouts and walking, those are great ways to stay active, and I will give the 10-second handstand a shot. This week on social media, we posted another check-in question, and John, do you have that one for us now?
Well, I'm going to bring it back to the Tolstoy quote and reference the fact that I'm sure there have been moments of happiness and moments of unhappiness through this, we'll call it an ordeal. And I'm curious as to what people would like to see stay after all this is said and done, and maybe what people would like to say, I never want to see that again. So whether it's something that's made your family happy or has made your family unhappy, that would be my check-in question this week.
Perfect. Thank you. There are now 3 ways you could answer this week's check-in question. You can email your response to bhpodcast@balmoralhall.ca. You could post a video reply to the question using Flipgrid by following the link in the show notes and then reading the instructions. It's pretty clear there. And now you can also answer the check-in question right in Instagram. So please connect with us as we may share your thoughts on next week's episode. As we end episode 7, we'd like to thank our guests for taking the time to chat with us this week. Thank you to BH Student Activities Coordinator Mandy Green for sharing the details of a very different prefect election experience this year. Also, thank you to our newly elected prefects for taking the time to speak with us today. A shout out, as always, to Mr. John Kerr for his insight, the laughs, and the company.
I'm not laughing as hard because I didn't get the roast the host question.
I think it's important for our students to see that we're human.
Yes.
And finally, a big thanks to producer Chris in the booth for always taking care of us, and for the metaphor sound when John has one of those special moments.
Thanks, Chris.
We'll be back next week with episode 8, a very special doll assembly episode. We'll be sharing the highlights from this year's virtual doll assembly, and we'll be chatting with 2003 BH graduate and current alumni relations specialist Genevieve Cloutier about what this event means to the BH community. We also get to catch up with 3 alumni from 1983 to discuss their experiences at the 1983 Doll Assembly. And we'll finally answer the question that everyone has been asking about since episode 1, and that is, what is the Doll Assembly conspiracy? That and more metaphors, more stories, and fun. Thank you so much for listening each week. Until next time, friends.
Bye, folks.
2.
What makes you say that?
What Makes You Say That is a Balmoral Hall School production, all rights reserved.